This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
"22 civilians have been killed by militants in the eastern DRC town of Beni. Leaders of 5 countries battling terrorism in the Sahel region meet in Niger. And no deal despite an extended COP25 summit in Madrid. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme. Boeing considers a temporary halt in the production of its 737 MAX. And Egypt are crowned champions at the Africa Junior Canoe and Kayak Championship. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where 22 civilians have been killed by militants in the eastern town of Beni. The attack happened on Sunday night as rebels kept up attacks on civilians despite the government claims to have them on the defensive. 13 women were killed in the attack. The incident came a day after 6 other civilians were killed in an attack in Beni. About 180 other civilians are reported to have died in similar attacks in the region since the Congolese army launched an offensive on the Allied Democratic Forces, that's a Ugandan Islamist group, late in October. The Congolese government has said that the group is acting out of desperation. A surge in violence has led to protests against the government and UN protection. Insecurity has also complicated efforts to eradicate an Ebola outbreak in the area. Well, elsewhere, leaders of the G5 Sahel task force are in Niger. Their visit follows a militant attack on a military camp that killed 71 soldiers last week. The leaders from Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mauritania and Chad honoured the fallen soldiers in a sombre ceremony. They also discussed the state of the G5 task force. CGTN's Astatal has more.
Leaders from the Sahel G5 states greet military personnel as they arrive at Niger's Square of the Martyrs. They're honoring soldiers like 27-year-old Mohamed Sadi Abdou. Abdou is among the soldiers killed after members of the Islamic State in West Africa attacked his remote military camp. As part of the ceremony, the leaders take part in a 5-minute prayer for the fallen soldiers. Militant attacks are something Niger's neighbors continue to battle head-on.
As we fight against terrorism in the G5 Sahel countries, we must work so as to secure victory in the medium and long term. In this fight, when losing our own armed forces, we need allies like in every country of the world.
At the conference hall, the state of the Sahel G5 task force takes center stage. The task force is part of an effort to better coordinate anti-terrorism efforts in the region. The leaders want the international community to provide more support.
In order to demonstrate your solidarity to the people of Niger, my dear counterparts from G5 Sahel, you have traveled to Niger in this fight against terrorism. We need not fewer allies, but many allies. This call, we renewed it since the launch of the International Coalition for the Fight Against Terrorism in the Sahel and Lake Chad Basin. Our request to the international community is based on real facts. The international community is liable for our suffering due to its disastrous decision to intervene in Libya.
At the end of the summit, a report will be published showing the new measures the G5 will take in combating terrorism. Astatal, CGTN.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi says Libya's UN-backed government is being held hostage by armed militias. The Egyptian made the statement in a televised address on Sunday. Egypt's government backs Eastern Military Commander General Khalifa Haftar. Haftar's military has for months pursued an offensive to capture the capital Tripoli. The international community is split on who to support in Libya. Certain countries back Haftar's offensive, while others, like Turkey, back the government of national accord. President Sisi says Egypt has been negatively affected by the Libyan conflict. Well, Adel El Mahrouhi is with us in Cairo and now joins us with implications of President El-Sisi's statement. Adel, give us a few details of what else was contained in the president's speech.
Well, the president's speech comes to describe recent escalations and redefining a sort of a position of Egypt towards the Libyan conflict. The president was clearly stating how effective the instability in Libya reflects on Egypt's national security. And he also noted that Egypt was and has the capability to intervene directly in the Libyan conflict. However, it has decided not to do so in order to maintain its respect to the Libyan people and help them find a political solution. The president says that Egypt is currently working to reach a political solution within the coming few months. And he says that the reason of his support, or Egypt's support, to the LNA forces, which Egypt recognized as a united Libyan military force or a national army, is that its loyalty, according to the president, its loyalty will be to the entire Libyan nation. But the militias will have different agendas, and this is where he mentioned what you've just said, that the government of national accord cannot take any decision on its own because it is held hostage to extremist and terrorist groups and militias in the capital, Tripoli. And it is within these lines that we see that Egypt is sort of sending warnings indirectly, maybe. One of them, because the president notes have come they followed a statement from the Speaker of the Egyptian Parliament, who said that the Libyan Eastern Parliament is the only recognized or the only representative of the Libyan people, in a sense that was completely disregarding the existence that the government of national accord and the recognition it has from the United Nations. And then the president comes to just show the concerns they have towards the government of national accord, which is no secret, but it's more of an explanation of Egypt's stance for months and years for its support to the Eastern government and the LNA forces.
So, Adel, does this mean that Egypt will no longer recognize the Tripoli-based government?
Well, politically, that has not been said. And even the president remarks when he criticized it, or he explained that it doesn't have the power to give its own directives or its own orders, it was an indication that the government of national accord is greatly influenced by the militias in Tripoli. And therefore, it's more of an explanatory to why they're supporting the eastern side rather than the government in Tripoli. But it doesn't say in any way, or there hasn't been any diplomatic statements from the foreign ministry itself saying that they do no longer recognize the government of national accord. They're saying that they will continue to negotiate with all Libyan factions, not terrorists, not extremists, and try to reach a solution for the coming months.
And finally, Adel, what sort of relationship are we looking at going forward between Egypt and Libya?
Well, Egypt, for it, Libya's stability is crucial. Whenever there is instability, there is division, as we're seeing, and the fight going on over the capital, Tripoli. Groups like ISIL, they gain power from that. They become stronger and bigger, and therefore they threaten Egypt. And therefore, for Egypt, stability is crucial. And empowering a unified armed forces, a national army for Libya, is very important to maintain security of the borders, and also to strike deals in terms of security so that both countries can have a sort of collaboration. But when the country is divided, it is quite a dissipation of efforts to negotiate with several parties. And at the end, when these parties are in a rivalry situation, it is not guaranteed that any agreement between Egypt and Libya can be actually implemented on the ground. And therefore, Egypt's prime concern now is to unify Libyan factions, to maintain that there is one military power, that there is one police force. These are the only two bodies that are allowed to carry arms in Libya, and therefore would found the basis and the crucial foundation for Libya to establish its own government and have final political transition. But so far, Egypt has been challenged, right, like the rest of the world and regional power, into maintaining this unity, especially with the escalations we've seen after Khalifa Haftar announced that they will march strongly to get full control over the capital.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Adel. That was CG10's Adel El Marhouhi there for us in Cairo. Well, African security officials and defense ministers are gathered in Egypt for a special African Union meeting. They're discussing safety and security on the continent. Here's Adel El Marhouhi again.
The iconic Massa Convention Center of Egypt's new capital is hosting the last African meeting in Egypt this year. It's the 15th African Union Defense and Chiefs of Staff meeting and the 12th regular meeting for the AU Commission's Specialized Technical Committee on Defense, Safety and Security. It's a platform to create African policies to achieve peace and security and counter threats, on top of which terrorist attacks.
These attacks bear testimony to the expansive scourge of terrorism and violent extremism. To silence the guns in Africa as part of the process to create the required conditions for building a conflict-free Africa.
One of Africa's challenges is to rapidly mobilize its African standby forces across the continent. In that regard, the AU Commission was keen to commend China's support in helping the AU to achieve this target.
The department continues to enhance the policies, structures, mechanisms and resources to make the ASF rapidly deployable. A number of member states have put at the disposal of the AU Commission increasing resources as required, including airlift capabilities. Partners, including China and Turkey, delivered equipment worth more than $30 million United States dollars to equip our African standby force.
These sessions are reviewing the status of conflicts and peace efforts in Africa. They aim to create a platform for African security collaboration. For Egypt, the meetings are essential to complement its 2019 efforts as chair to allocate billions of dollars worth of investments to Africa.
Egypt has dedicated its chairmanship in the African Union to developing the continent. Without security and peace, there is no development at all. Egypt has a dream of international continental development in accordance with the vision of 2063. We are 54 countries, spread over 30 million square kilometers, and with a population of 1.3 billion people. It's crucial to work together to eradicate all the challenges to peace and security.
This meeting has a great significance to Egypt. It crowns its year long of chairmanship for the African Union, and Cairo wants to leave a great impression before its term ends. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including Zimbabwe Vice President's wife arrested for suspected fraud and money laundering. And no deal despite an extended COP25 summit in Madrid.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures. we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed.
And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference.
Zimbabwean authorities have arrested the wife of Vice President Constantino Chiwenga. Mari Mobaiwa was apprehended on Saturday evening on charges of money laundering, fraud and violating exchange control regulations. She's expected to appear in court this Monday. There's been a disappointing ending to the UN climate conference in Madrid. It ran 2 days longer than scheduled, and its compromise deal failed to tackle one of the summit's most contentious issues. CGTN's Guy Henderson reports now from Madrid.
All the documents being published.
After the longest UN climate talks on record, tiredness turned to confusion.
We're having all of these technical difficulties.
In the final plenary, numerous delegations struggled to find the draft documents they were being asked to finalise.
We don't know what document you're referring to.
Some even noted errors in the text that had to be corrected. With that ironed out, there was still deadlock on a central issue: rules for a carbon market seen as vital for reducing global emissions. Brazil continued to dig in its heels.
We invested a lot of energy in this regard, and find it very frustrating that at the end of the day we were not able to arrive at a final agreement.
A group of some 30 countries, including large economies like Germany and the Netherlands, formed a coalition of the willing instead, in a side deal dubbed the San Jose Principles.
The absence of rules to operationalize Article 6 does not prevent the Paris Agreement from functioning, does not prevent parties from having carbon markets, international carbon markets, and trying to relate to each other.
These weren't just the longest talks, they were also some of the most fractious. That's not to say there wasn't any progress.
All participants did at least agree to scale up their financial support for countries that are likely to be hit hardest by climate change, but no solid commitments to new funds. And there's been alarm expressed by some delegations about the United States continuing to block further progress on that front, despite the fact that they are pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords.
Consensus too that all nations must bolster their national emissions reductions plans over the next 12 months. At one stage, not even that was certain. Still, there is widespread disappointment.
President Trump and the President Bolsonaro from Brazil have undermined these negotiations here. And if they are going to continue so next year, we need a different answer from strong economies like the European Union, together with China, together with India, to come up with a new narrative of hope for the young people out there.
Next year's summit in Glasgow will be a crucial one. If it ends like this, the very credibility of the Paris Accords could be at stake.
In Somalia, an estimated 180,000 people have been forced out of their homes by flooding, especially in the southern parts of the country. At least 265 people are said to have died as a result. 2 months of relentless rains have left behind damage that has spread across roads, schools and health centres. Crops and livestock have also been severely affected. Earlier this month, Tropical Storm Pawan hit the coast of Somalia, bringing along strong winds and heavy rainfall. The storm resulted in more flash floods that killed 6 people and displaced about 5,000 others. More than 30,000 people are said to have lost their livelihoods. The United Nations is warning that extreme weather will increase as climate change continues. In France, gale force winds and flooding are battering the southwest of the country. 2 people have been killed and tens of thousands of homes left without electricity. The region is only just recovering from 2 earlier severe storms. CGTN's Jim Spencer has more.
11 regions in France now have severe weather warnings in place. The authorities are taking no risks. These are deadly floods. A 70-year-old man died when the car he was in was hit by a fallen tree. A 76-year-old man was swept away by rising water as he went to buy his morning paper. Rescuers found his body 24 hours later, more than a kilometre from his home. Some river levels rose by as much as 2.7 metres. One rose by 30 centimetres every hour. On Saturday morning, 400,000 homes woke without power. One energy firm says it's struggling to cope with the volume of calls, coupled with the adverse conditions. Flooding and landslides have cut off access to many towns. Water supplies have also been cut, and there are concerns some people don't have access to drinking water. Forecasters say by Monday morning the fierce weather should have stopped, and then for many an all too familiar clean-up can start. Jim Spencer, CGTN.
Let's return to one of our stories about the G5 Sahel task force in Niger. Their visit follows a militant attack on a military camp that killed 71 soldiers last week. Well, we can now go to Colonel Hassan Stanlabo. He's a retired military officer and security consultant. He has been monitoring developments in the Sahel, and he now joins us from Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us, Colonel. Thousands of troops in the region, including French troops, yet there seems to be an escalation of the attacks in the region. Are you seeing the same thing, and what do you think is the problem?
Thank you so much. I think first and foremost, I must say this, there isn't enough commitment, so to speak, from the superpowers who are lending support to the countries or the G5 within that general area. When I say that there isn't enough commitment, the point I'm trying to make is that there is a need for us to be able to see through their actions, and they should stop giving us the impression that giving us actions that leaves us with the impression that their actions are rather suspect. For instance, where are the surveillance capabilities of these countries that would have been brought to bear on the situation on ground? Where are how many of the special forces components of these super countries, superpowers, that would have been moved in to see that they are able to bring down the tempo of the situation on ground? How much of military advisors do we have on ground? What is happening with equipment and so on? Because the killings are getting too much. It's getting too much. And for one to think that there are superpowers also involved in lending support, one would have expected a far better result on ground than what we see. Okay?
So Colonel, what...
besides that, it is important that there is... Yes, please.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Colonel, what resolutions would you like to see come out of this G5 Sahel meeting, and how do we guarantee a successful follow-through on this?
You mean what resolutions I expect from the conference?
Exactly, from this meeting, yeah.
Coming up conference, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. I expect that conference will be able to come out with a timeline, for instance, all right, which all parties, all stakeholders will try to stick to. I expect that conference to be able to look in the direction of a synergy between the multinational joint task force and maybe the G5, and see how such a synergy could bring about a buffer zone, all right? A buffer zone that will be able to put that.
Well, we are now going live to a meeting. This is Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam. She is in Beijing at the moment for talks with Premier Li Keqiang and President Xi Jinping. This follows months of protests over the amendments to the extradition legislation in Hong Kong. She's currently making a statement. Let's now listen in.
今早上咧係獲得總理李克強嘅接見，
下午咧係獲得國家主席習近平嘅接見，呢個安排咧同往年都係一樣嘅。不過喺我週末即係週六抵京嘅時候咧，就當晚咧係獲得韓正副總理宴請。呢個雖然唔係述職嘅一部分，但係咧亦都係俾個機會咧，我可以同韓正副總理咧係介紹下香港最新嘅情況。港澳辦同埋中聯辦兩位主任咧都有出席嘅。當然今年述職嘅背景咧係同往年非常之不同啦，因為香港係經歷咗6個月因為修例而引起咗嘅社會嘅動盪。正如兩位領導人講啦，亦都係回歸以嚟香港面對最嚴峻、最複雜嘅局面，而且係一直係延續到而家嘅。雖然喺壓止暴力方面係取得咗一定嘅成效，大家會見到咧呢啲暴力嘅行為咧係有所減退，而暴徒嘅人數咧亦都有所下降，但係佢仍然係時有發生。好似我哋經歷咗2-3個禮拜相對平靜咧，我知道昨天晚上喺旺角一帶亦都有暴徒係進行一啲堵路啊、縱火嘅行為，令到警方咧亦都係喺冇辦法之下要發放一啲嘅催淚煙。喺呢個情況之下咧，我嘅報告當然咧係會詳細匯報今日香港嘅最新嘅情況。同埋今次經歷咗6個月嘅社會動盪之後，對於香港各方面嘅影響，包括社會經濟同埋民生方面。好感謝兩位領導人都係充分肯定特區政府全力去維護社會穩定所做嘅工作，同埋喺呢個困難嘅時刻，見到個經濟嘅下滑，亦都係推出咗一系列嘅措施咧嚟到輔助企業同埋紓解民困。兩位領導人亦都係重申目前最重要嘅任務係依法嚟到止暴制亂，恢復社會嘅秩序。而喺呢個工作咧，我哋係必須要堅守1國2制呢個方針，亦都係要維護香港嘅長期繁榮穩定。習主席特別重申佢喺巴西出席金磚國家領導人會晤時候嘅重要講話，裏面嘅3個堅定不移。第一咧係維護國家主權、安全、發展利益咧嘅決心係堅定不移。第二係貫徹1國2制方針嘅決心咧係堅定不移。第三係反對任何外部勢力干涉香港嘅事務嘅決心咧係堅定不移嘅。主席喺堅定支持特區政府依法施政嘅同時，亦都喺公開嘅部分啦，係堅定支持香港警方係需要嚴正執法。值得強調嘅係，主席亦都係表明咗，希望社會各界人士能夠團結一致，共同推動香港發展重回正軌。呢個亦都係過去一段日子咧，我不斷呼籲要真正做到止暴制亂，不但只係依法嚟到執法，嚟到去檢控同埋懲治，亦都要需要全社會各個界別嘅人士係向暴力說不，係表達出希望香港重新恢復社會秩序，恢復到社會安寧呢個共同願望。咁我哋先能夠可以做到事半功倍嘅。香港嘅經濟要發展重回正軌，係需要中央政府繼續喺大力嘅支持。所以我喺同總理嘅會面嘅時候咧，係特別提出咗喺唔同嘅經濟領域嗰方面，都希望喺未來嘅日子裏邊咧，中央會繼續係推出一啲有利香港發展嘅措施啦。當然包括喺粵港澳大灣區裏邊嘅發展，領導人嘅反應咧都係好正面嘅。兩位領導人亦都提到香港事實上咧係存在一啲深層次社會矛盾同埋問題，係認為要認真研究、努力解決。呢個亦都係點解我喺早前提出咗咧，希望係成立一個獨立檢討嘅委員會，幫我哋去檢視今次持續咗6個月嘅社會動盪嘅原因啦，同埋係揾出呢啲深層次嘅社會矛盾同埋問題，從而提出一啲解決方案嘅建議。 事實上喺過去2年半，亦即係話喺我上2次嘅述職嘅期間咧，我都向領導人匯報咗特區政府喺房屋啊、土地、教育、青年政策同埋經濟結構多元化。去打造一個國際科技創新中心方面咧，我哋都係提出咗一啲新嘅政策措施，亦都投入咗大量嘅公共嘅資源。所以呢啲嘅工作咧喺未來嘅日子裏邊係會繼續推行。不過當然而家首要任務咧係一定要壓止暴力，恢復社會嘅秩序，有呢個相對嘅安穩平靜嘅環境，我哋就可以一方面針對經濟下行或者下滑嘅風險咧，繼續推出適當嘅措施，亦都可以去同全社會檢視呢啲社會深層次嘅問題。睇下大家有啲咩？
想問下咧，見呢一個總理李克強嗰個地方，
維護國家安全法律係緊迫嘅任務啦。想問下今次述職中央有冇俾壓力你去立3條嘅唔係？
我對於按住基本法第23條嘅本地立法工作咧，一直都係表達咗以下嘅立場嘅，係維護國家嘅主權、安全、發展嘅利益，係我哋嘅憲制嘅責任。而要按住呢個憲制責任咧，係要成功可以做到呢個嘅工作。23條嘅立法喺香港曾經係引起咗好多嘅爭議，咁所以係需要審時度勢咧，係揾到一個好嘅機會，有好嘅環境同埋條件咧，我哋先能夠推行呢個工作。今日首要嘅任務係針對過去6個月出現咗嘅社會動盪，同埋呢啲暴力嘅事件嚟到去壓止呢個暴力，讓香港咧早日恢復嗰個平靜。
林林，我想問，因為佢話咧有話佢支持係警隊嗰個繼續去依法去執法啦，即係習近平主席有咁樣講到啦。會唔會即係其實都係更加鼓勵咗警方去強硬執法？會唔會仲有可能好似一哥早前咁講係剛柔並濟咧？另外就係想問翻監警會咧，就係海外專家嗰個小組早前又辭任啦，會唔會就係好似外界所講嘅係刮咗你一巴？會唔會都代表住監警會係缺乏公信力？係咪真係有需要去成立獨立調查委員會咧？
主席喺今日嘅公開講話咧，係堅定支持香港警方嚴正執法。呢個説法咧，喺主席喺11月14日喺巴西出席金磚國家領導人會晤嘅時候嘅講話裏邊都有呢一句。當然係喺實際嘅情況之下，點樣做到嚴正執法，應該係留翻執法嘅部門嚟嘅決定。即使我作為行政長官，我都唔會去指導每一場嘅暴力事件裏邊嘅執法嘅工作。而香港嘅警隊一向都係以文明克制嚟到去有呢個享譽國際嘅聲譽啊！佢哋喺持續6個月裏邊嘅面對或接近即係好多數百場呢啲嘅暴力事件裏邊咧，亦都係按住法律、按住警隊嘅內部嘅指引咧嚟到去執法，所以並不存在話主席嘅説法咧有改變咗警務處喺執法方面嘅策略，同埋佢每一次執法需要考慮一啲好複雜嘅因素啦。至於喺監警會嘅工作，我希望喺呢度再重申啦。雖然我都講咗即係好多次，監警會係一個獨立法定嘅機構，喺法律上賦予佢嘅任務咧，主要有2方面嘅。第一個咧就係處理對於個別警員喺執法期間出現咗一啲嘅投訴，咁喺投訴警察科去調查之後咧，就由監警會獨立去審視呢個調查嘅報告咧，先至成立，而採取適當嘅行動。照我所知，而家監警會就住呢一連串呢6個月嘅事件咧，已經收到超過500份500個呢啲叫做係需匯報嘅投訴。咁所以大量嘅有關投訴嘅工作咧已經喺度進行緊。而投訴警察科咧，亦都係知道今次有好多嘅數量嘅投訴啦，亦都有社會嘅關注，所以為此咧，亦都係成立咗一啲專責小組嚟去處理有關呢啲投訴嘅調查嘅工作。第二個嘅職權範圍係比較少用嘅，但今次按住實際嘅情況咧，喺7月初監警會已經係主動去決定係援引 佢哋呢個第二個嘅職權範圍咧，就係當有一啲嘅社會性嘅事件引起咗數量比較多嘅投訴，監警會亦都可以審視呢啲個別嘅事件，或者喺呢啲事件裏邊警方執法時候嘅程序同埋嘅手法，而去揾出有冇不足嘅地方，從而為政府，包括我本人啦，或者警務處處長咧提出一啲嘅改善嘅建議。希望喺以後面對同樣嘅情況嘅時候咧，可以減少呢啲嘅程序上嘅不足之處，而減少個別嘅警員被投訴啦。咁所以今日當我哋講監警會呢個審視嗰個事實嘅報告咧，正正就係按住呢個職權範圍去做。咁所以我希望社會大眾咧，一方面就係尊重監警會係行使緊佢嘅法定職權，第二咧亦都係認同監警會差唔多呢5-6個月咧係做咗大量嘅工作。第三咧係應該俾呢個空間同埋時間，讓監警會喺明年初能夠提交俾特區政府第一個報告。咁相信對於我哋了解呢警方執法嘅事件咧係有幫助嘅。至於監警會喺做呢個審視事實報告嘅過程裏邊，佢係採取咗啲咩嘅方法啦，或者委任咗啲咩專家咧？呢個就由監警會決定。咁正如梁定邦主席都應該係接受咗訪問，作咗解釋咧，我呢度就唔代佢去再有進一步嘅補充。
Well, we've been listening there to a statement by Hong Kong's Chief Executive Carrie Lam, who is in Beijing for talks with Premier Li Keqiang and President Xi Jinping over the situation in Hong Kong. We are now going to a break. We've got all the business news coming up, including Boeing considers a temporary halt in the production of the 737 MAX. And Ethiopia to receive $3 billion from the World Bank to strengthen reforms.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Boeing is considering a temporary halt in the production of the 737 MAX. This as regulatory clearance for the grounded jet's return looks increasingly likely to slip beyond January 2020. Meanwhile, the board is also studying another slowdown in output for what was once its best-selling jet. Executives are convinced a temporary pause would be less disruptive. A decision could come as soon as Monday as Boeing's directors review the manufacturing plans for the 737 program, the company's biggest source of revenue, as part of a scheduled December board meeting. Ethiopia is set to receive a $3 billion loan from the World Bank in a bid to bolster reforms in its economy. This follows the approval by the International Monetary Fund to grant a 3-year, $2.9 billion financing package to support the country's economic reforms. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed also confirmed that there were unnamed development partners who pledged more than $3 billion in addition to the World Bank and IMF funding. Allocation of funds is expected to be spread out through the macroeconomic, structural and sectoral reforms. Nigeria and Brazil have committed to boost trade relations between their countries. Brazilian External Affairs Minister Ernesto Aranjo was on a working visit to Abuja and held talks with Nigeria's Foreign Minister Geoffrey Onyema. Nigeria hopes to boost its economy through increased trade, improved agricultural initiatives and multilateralism. Both countries are also partnering to counter insecurity. For the West African nation, the first step would be to improve on the ease of doing business in the country. Nigeria is a major petroleum supplier to Brazil, and trade volume between both countries runs into billions of dollars.
We share concerns on the need to fight terrorism and to fight organized crime across the Atlantic. South Atlantic especially is becoming a challenge for the world, but we as important countries around the South Atlantic have a special responsibility, and we would like to address that responsibility together.
The Senegalese government recently announced a 6 to 10% increase in the price of electricity. According to the country's national electricity company, Senelec, the rise is due to a shortfall of at least $20 million in 2019. The increase has not gone down well with consumers. Some Senegalese civil organizations have created a Nou Lank movement, which means we say no, to show their disagreement.
En 2016, certains pays voisins avaient révisé leurs tarifs d'électricité.
In 2016, some neighboring countries revisited their electricity prices. I would cite Ghana, Mali, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and even France are all considering to do so. This trend is imposed on almost all oil and gas producing and even non-producing countries. Senegal, which is one of the same economic environment, could no longer continue to avoid the truth for prices.
I buy prepaid electricity before this increase with $17 US. I had electricity for 1 month. Now, with the same amount, I only have electricity for 10 days. It's too expensive for me.
We urge that the government stop this increase in the price of electricity. The increase will impact all sectors and all basic necessities will increase.
Botswana's budget retailer Choppies has announced its exit from 3 more African markets. This follows its announcement less than a fortnight ago that it would sell its loss-making South African operations for only 6 cents. Choppies is set to dispose of its operations in Mozambique, Tanzania and Kenya, halving its footprint to just 4 countries. Its operations will continue in Botswana, Zimbabwe, Zambia and Namibia. In September 2018, the retailer's shares plunged more than 60% due to the delay in publication of its financial statements. However, upon release, it posted a $40.8 million loss after tax in delayed results for the financial year. Egypt's national carrier Egyptair has announced the inauguration of a new route from Cairo to Hangzhou. This is a new addition to the Egyptair flights to China. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more.
The new route has raised Egyptair's destinations to 3 cities in China, doubling the number of flights to and from China.
Egyptair had started with only 1 destination. It was to Beijing 3 times a week. Later, it launched another route to Guangzhou on a daily basis, and now a third route to Hangzhou 2 times a week, all developed within a short span of time.
China is seen as a major tourism market for Egypt. The new flight routes are part of efforts by Cairo to increase the number of visitors to the North African country.
So basically China is one of the biggest markets for outbound tourism. So when we look at from a macro level, you will find that 174 million travelers from China per year with an average spend of $180 million US per year. So the number that Egypt has managed to get like a couple of years ago was around only 115,000 travelers, and the number that we managed to reach during this year, 2019, is actually that we doubled this amount, getting closer to 250,000 travelers from Chinese tourists.
Experts are calling for more creative efforts to attract Chinese tourists.
We need as well to start creating the Chinese products, from a travel perspective, that they will like. So China is mainly exporting like to say Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia. Now from our region you have from the Middle East, Dubai starting getting business from them, definitely as well Europe, London and Paris. And Egypt is a great destination for them because they like a lot the culture and heritage tours. So by creating the packages that they will like, the product that fits their criteria, widening as well the level of service and the tour guides that speak Mandarin, it will actually facilitate the process and will start attracting more tourists from China.
The new flights are not only targeting tourists. Egypt Air is facilitating travel for businessmen as well, to promote bilateral trade and investments. That's Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Botswana's government has revoked the licenses of 2 professional hunters who shot dead an elephant used for research and then destroyed its collar to try to hide the evidence. Michael Lee Potter and Kevin Sharp surrendered their licenses after shooting the elephant at the end of last month. Potter was banned for an indefinite period and Sharp for 3 years. The shooting recalled the killing of Cecil the lion by an American hunter in neighbouring Zimbabwe in 2015. Also an animal that had a research collar and was supposed to be protected. Botswana President Mokgweetsi Masisi sparked global controversy when he lifted a ban on elephant hunting in May. The ban had been installed 5 years earlier by his predecessor Ian Hammer, an ardent conservationist. Botswana is home to almost a third of the continent's elephants. We are going to a short break now. Don't go away. Lots more to come, including artists in Ethiopia on show at the largest annual exhibition in Addis Ababa.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Artists in Ethiopia have showed up for the largest annual exhibition in Addis Ababa. This is the 11th round of the event. This year, the country's top painters were the focus. The Art of Ethiopia exhibition is hailed for developing the country's art industry. CGTN's Giram Chala has more.
Hundreds of artists from different backgrounds and resemblance showcased their base works on this year's Arts of Ethiopia exhibition. From reality to abstract, even creative works were on display for close to a week.
Most of my artworks focus on Ethiopian history and culture, as well as history and religion. I use my own technique and experience. I do not only use brushes, but also apply different experiments into my work.
My works are based on the Euro scenery. And what I have tried to show is the common human behavior displayed in animals. For instance, it could be about motherhood. Motherhood can be seen between non-humans. So such commonalities attract you here to my works.
Before and now, my works come from my deepest thinking about my environment. My works evolve the more I grow as well. This time I have focused on gratitude and faith.
Every day and for 5 consecutive days, art lovers have flocked in here, admiring the works as well as the progress as seen over the years.
It's interesting. It's really growing every year. I've been here I've attended all of them in the past 11 years. The first one was quite small and was limited to few artists. But now through the years, new artists, new techniques, new ideas and themes are coming up, and it's really nice. I think that even the visitors' number have gone up significantly.
The organizers of Arts of Ethiopia exhibition say this yearly event has played key roles both for the growth of the industry in the country and in making artists much more creative.
The main purpose of this show is
to introduce the Ethiopian art for the international and also for the local community, and to give a chance for the artists, to support the artists. So some of the artists, they have art galleries, but a lot of them, they don't have art galleries, or they cannot show off their artwork. So this is creating opportunity for the artists.
Come next year, the organizers tell you the Art of Ethiopia exhibition will return larger and stronger. And based on the reactions from the audience here, many are looking forward to seeing the new artworks at the upcoming 12th edition. Grumtala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All the sports news coming up for you after the break, including Egypt crowned champions after scooping 20 gold medals at the Africa Junior Canoe and Kayak Championship.